Welcome to Behind the Ride with the Coal Collective. So we're back outside the barn again. It's been a slightly longer winter than I would have liked. The bike's been on the turbo trainer for quite a few weeks, and while the back wheel's out, I thought I'd actually take the opportunity to have a quick look at one of the latest technologies that I've been playing around with for the last few months. It's the Mavic Road UST. I actually fielded quite a few questions as well, people asking about UST. There's been a lot in the media about the technology, and it's not actually a new technology. I personally started using Road UST, or started demoing it out many years ago. I remember I was racing back in the UK, and there was an event called the Rutland Classic, which was kind of dubbed the Paris-Roubaix in the UK, going across a load of farm tracks, and I sort of made a hybrid, got a set of Ceriums and made a hybrid system, UST system at the time. And I put a set of Hutchinson tyres on. It was the UST Road, I think Fusion 2, something like that. I think we're going back probably 7, 8 years at least. So I'd been using it on the mountain bike, and UST and tubeless was absolutely spot on. So I had great experience with it. So moving on to the road, thought, well, this is going to be a great system. But I soon found, although in the race I got through, didn't puncture, first time I set it up I thought, hopefully it's going to work, because it took me a long time in the garage to actually get the tyres on and get it inflated. So I was already sort of, alarm bells were going, and I was questioning what I was actually doing. And then when I got out on the road, I thought, wow, this ride's pretty good. It felt quite smooth. It kind of felt similar to a tubular, which I really liked. You could run the pressure lower and not risk a pinch flat. So yeah, I thought to myself, it's a good system. But the big drawback, which I evidently found quite quickly, was when I did puncture and I needed to put a tube in because the sealant didn't work. I slashed the tyre up beyond repair, and I was sat at the side of the road, middle of winter, and trying to get this inner tube into the tyre, and it was impossible. It was actually impossible to get the tyre off the rim to begin with, so I stood no chance. Middle of winter, my hands were freezing cold, and I just gave up in the end and rode back on a flat tyre. Not the best thing in the world. Pretty annoyed actually, because I thought that the system was going to be sort of the saviour and no more flat tyres in the winter, and just purely because of that experience, Road UST went out the window, and I reverted straight back to tubes, and I've been on tubes ever since, tubes or tubular, depending on what rides and races I'm doing. And obviously working closely with Mavic, who were the pioneers, incidentally, of mountain bike UST, so they've got a lot of experience. But I started hearing more and more about road tubeless, and sat in meetings, and and I actually remember thinking to myself, well, I've got my experience with it, and it's not a particularly good experience. So I remember sort of sitting at the back of the meeting room, almost sort of sulking down into my chair, slumping down like like a teenager, not really wanting to be in class. And I just remember thinking to myself, well, I know what tubeless is all about, and I'm actually not really that prepared to give it another go after that experience. So eventually things trickled on, and I got a new setup. So I've got the Cosmic Pro Carbon SL and their Ixion Pro UST specific tyres, and they arrived, and I thought, well, let's give it a go. I mean, time's moved on, and let's see if it's any better than it was. So got into the garage, gave it a good test, and I actually set it up for the first time just prior to when we filmed the 2018 Stage 17 Tour de France Recon. Finishes at the top of the Col de Portet, new climb for the Tour de France. I knew there were some sections of gravel, and I thought UST is going to be the perfect test platform for it, so I can run my tyres nice and soft and see if we have any problems. So got into the garage to build it up, get it on the bike, and see if I faced any of the problems that I had in the past. Now, interestingly, this video's really based on my experience. So I had pretty negative experiences with UST in the past. As I said, used it, got away with it, but then as soon as I had problems out on the road, I was basically a dead man. So the experiences over the last 6 months of what I've learnt, and that really started off in the garage. How easy is it to set this system up? I had the old system. I remember pumping it up in the garage and trying to pump it up in the garage. Eventually had to get an air compressor to actually get the tyre to seat, and having all sorts of latex explosions in the garage, which is pretty messy stuff, when the tyre burst off the rim and the sealant inside went everywhere. So I wasn't keen to replicate that, and yeah, let's see how we got on. So first thing I noticed, and this is flat at the moment, but the first thing my personal experience years ago was getting the tyre off of the rim, and really what that comes down to is, back in the day, you would have a standard bike rim, and then a UST manufacturer of tyres. I guess through paranoia would be like, well, we don't want this thing coming off the rim, so we'll make sure that the tolerances are as such that once it's on the rim, it's not going to come off. That doesn't really help when you want to take the tyre off or put it on. So, you know, the first thing I noticed, or was in my head, was like, how easy is it actually going to be to put a tyre on and take a tyre off? That was the first preconception that I wanted to get over in my own mind. So the tyre's on. It's not inflated at the moment. So as you can see, you just work. It's pretty easy to you know, just make sure that it's not sealed, and the tyre bead isn't actually clipped into the hooks on the rim. When you know that it's not sealed, you just go all the way around the rim, nice and simple. I start off at the valve. There's a couple of tricks which I've learnt for putting a tyre on and taking the tyre off. Makes it a little bit more simple. You start off at the valve. There's a bit more air volume around here, and yeah, it's pretty remarkable now. You literally can just lift the tyre up. I have to stand up just to get a bit of leverage, put that there. You just lift the tyre up. There you go. I mean, it's off already. You just pop that off, run your finger around it. And this is what I struggled with massively at the side of the road. I mean, we had a couple of my friends, tyre levers everywhere. I mean, we just physically couldn't get the tyre off the rim, and you know, I've just sort of popped it off the rim like that, you know, simple as that, sort of 10-second job. So then I said to myself, actually, yeah, UST's moved on. That was my first problem, which I always had, and you know, it's a pretty chilly day out here, so I haven't, you know, my hands are a bit cold still. And straight away I thought to myself, just because the ease of getting the tyre off, if you do have a problem on the roadside, then at least you've got a chance of actually being able to service yourself at the side of the road and get going again. And for me personally, the more experience I had in the mountains, where you've got changing temperature. In the valley it's hot, at the top of the mountain it can be cold, weather changes very quickly. I lose dexterity in my hands super fast, so the slightest chill in the air, then haven't got the strength in my hands anymore. So I'm always generally, when the temperature's low, wearing gloves, trying to keep my hands warm so I've got dexterity, just in case I have a problem on the road and I need to take a tyre off. So in the mountains I've actually found myself that great, because I can get the tyre off so easy, it's not a problem even when I start to lose a bit of dexterity. So how do I get the tyre back on? So what I always do is I line my logos up, because it's important to look good, and also in terms of function, it's easier to find where the valve is if the logos are all lined up. You just look on the tyre and you say, right, that's where my valve is. And then putting the first half on is always really straightforward. So you just snap that into place, roll it on. So you've got the first half of the tyre on the rim. And then what I do is, whereas we started off at the valve when we took the tyre off, when I put the tyre back on, I start opposite the valve, because again, there's a bit more volume around where the valve is. So, and I just start by mounting the tyre in the normal way until I get to where the valve is, and you can see the tyres across the rim. And this is the moment where, if you've had experiences with tubeless in the past, this could be the part where you're sort of dreading and you're thinking that you're going to need the tyre levers and 3 to 4 sets of hands to try and just force the tyre on, because it can be a real pig, and that's the experience I've had in the past as well. So before I actually start to try and put the tyre on the rim, I just make sure that the tyre is actually pushed all the way in, so the actual bead of the tyre isn't hooked onto the rim at all. And that's just, you just go around the tyre, push it into position, make sure that the tyre is pushed into the centre of the rim, and then I just work my way around, just taking up the slack in the tyre like this until I get to the basically get to the valve again. And then really it's, I mean, I was absolutely amazed. I'm kind of almost doing it one-handed, you know. Normally you'd be swinging off of this and cursing and effing and jeffing and whatever, but yeah, I mean, I can see this is just going to fall on. I can basically just look at it and, you know, bit by bit, not even holding it, which again, for trying to get these UST tyres on in the past, which I'd used, it just wasn't an option to even think of doing this. And again, I mean, it's just gone on. It's so easy to put the tyre on. So we've taken the tyre off, we've put the tyre on. So I was in the garage and I was thinking, well, that was really easy. But of course, the next thing which posed a problem was pumping it up. And I started off with, you know, hand pump. That's never going to work. Got the track pump out. That didn't work. Eventually, I actually had to go to the garage where they had an air compressor and use the air compressor to try and just get it to seal. It was a real problem. I was stressing out because I had a race the next day, and of course, you know, I should have been well prepared, but these things happen. I thought it was going to be simple. It wasn't. We were talking, yeah, 7-8 years ago. So then I came to pumping it up, and, you know, standard track pump, you just put that on there. Just make sure that the tyre is actually completely on, and literally just pump it up, simple as that. You can pump it up with a hand pump. Obviously I've done that as well, but I mean, that's a couple of pumps on the track pump. I'm not you know, one-handed as well, so very easy. You can see that the tyre is completely seated. You know, we've got, yeah, a pretty decent amount of air in there, so extremely easy to take the tyre off, mount the tyre, and then pump it up. So it's my third area of UST nightmareness solved. I thought that's great. So what I then do is make sure, what's important is you make sure that the tyre is actually seated properly on the rim. So you just actually have to give it a bit more, pressure. And it's really important because you can see as the tyre is inflating, I can see here that the tyre is not clipped into the hooks on the rim. So the bead isn't seated properly. And around here I can see that the bead is seated properly, because you can actually see the side of the tyre where that bead is. And what you want is, you want to make sure that you put enough air in, and you can hear it. There's a nice visual, you can see it sort of snap into position, but you can also hear it. It just makes a nice clack clack noise, and you just put enough air in. I'll be quiet, and you might even be able to hear it as it clacks into position. I can see it's about to go. Oh, there's one. Pretty quiet today. Let's see if it's, and then you just want to check that the tyre is actually seated. Actually pretty good. It was a very quiet clack today. Normally it makes a little bit more of a clack, and that's just the tyre seating, so the tyre bead seating onto the hooks of the rim. And once you've got that amount of pressure in, I can see, I just give a little look. So I can see all the way around that the tyre is seated where it should be. And if you give it a little spin, you can see that it's running nice and true as well. So we know that that tyre is seated well, and then we've got to put a bit of sealant in. So now that we've got the tyre in position and the actual bead is properly installed onto the rim, I just let the tyre down again. And again, this wasn't a process that I enjoyed doing on the very early UST systems that I was using, purely because once I let the tyre down, I knew that it would be a real job to get it pumped up again. But now it's actually got a seal there, So you don't want to, you want to do it quite carefully. You let the air out of the tyre, and you can feel that the tyre is actually still gripping onto the hooks on the rim. So yeah, it's just a nice way to, it's kind of like reassurance really that the whole system is sort of complete and it's working as it should do. And then when you've got no air in the tyre, just take a little valve core removal tool and remove the valve core. Make sure it doesn't drop onto the gravel. So take that valve core out like that, and then we've got to put a bit of sealant in. So what am I actually using? I've done a lot with the Mavic sealant. This is what I'm going to put in now. This is the stuff I started using again when I got back into road tubeless, and I found it really good actually. I've had a couple of pretty nasty nicks in the tyres, and I've sealant sort of sprayed out momentarily before it sealed, and that was really, I think when we did the recon on the Portet, I did run the pressures pretty low because I don't know, I sort of thought to myself, let's see how good this UST tubeless really is, and yeah, maybe I ran them too low because I was literally going over the sort of drainage grates in the up the climb and sort of dinking the rim occasionally, a bit cyclocross style really, but you know, I wanted to test it out. I wanted to give it the full once over, and yeah, it was a good test, and nicked the tyre up a lot. I thought any other time definitely 100% would have punctured, and subsequently I've done a lot where I do get carried away of a weekend, and you know, I'll see a track or a trail and I'll be on the road bike, I call it the wrong bike, but I'll be on the road bike thinking, well, I just want to go and see where that trail is. And so I've sort of probably put the tubeless system now through its paces beyond what it was designed for with a standard 25mm tyre, which I run. So I'm, you know, my own personal experience now is sort of paradigm shift in terms of ease of use. And in terms of actually getting away with riding on pretty aggressive terrain on these road tyres. So I'm demoing out some product from Muck-Off as well, and so far I've found that both in terms of sort of puncture proofing and puncture repair, I found them equal. I've been using this more on the cross bike. It comes in a nice little packet, and yeah, actually to apply it, you just literally squeeze it straight in. So it's got quite a nice aroma to it as well. So on the cross bike, I punch it on the front, or I slash the tyre up on the front, and as the sealant was coming out, just to fix it, I could smell the Muck-Off aroma, which I thought was pretty pleasant. So, but either way, I found, you know, both work for me. They've worked really well so far. So. In terms of applying it, getting it in there, just give it a little shake, and then for a road tyre like this, I'm using 25mm, and they recommend 30 to 40mm of sealant. So this is a 120mm bottle, so I've got to suck up about a quarter of it if I can without it going everywhere, which is all right. That is, there we go. And then I've actually got probably just a touch more than I need, but it's not a problem. And then literally just put the syringe straight onto the valve. Make sure it's pushed all the way on, and then just push that sealant into the tyre. There we go. And now what I do actually is I'll just pull the syringe back just a touch. There's always going to be a few drops which come out but that sort of takes the pressure off of the, so when you pull this syringe off, like that, you get a little spurt, but it's nothing too dramatic. And then I put the valve core back in. Just tweak that up. Give it Still a little clean off. Actually, I've barely got any sealant out, which is good news. And then back onto pumping up. Now we know that the tyre's already sealed, so we don't have to go through the same process of overinflating it to actually seat the bead onto the hooks on the rim. That's already done in the last process. So now we can just put the pump back on. Let's see what we're gonna, and then just give it a few pumps like that. It's already sealed. Yep, air's going straight in. Now the interesting thing is pressures nowadays. I remember when I was racing years ago as a kid, and it was all about skinny tyres and bullet hard pressures, so I would run, you know, upwards of 100, 110 psi on 21 mil tyres. 23 became the norm, and then 25 is what I predominantly use now. A little bit wider if I'm on the cross bike or doing some particularly aggressive gravel, but 25 tubeless is it's kind of my standard sort of setup now. And I'll run, depending on the conditions. I mean, it's a nice dry day today, so if I'm on the road looking for kind of performance over comfort, personally I'll run around 79 psi in the back, which is just a fraction under 6 bar, and a few psi less than that, so maybe 4 or 5 psi less than that in the front. There is actually a really nice little app that Mavic have got called a My Mavic app, and you can go on there and you can plug in all your riding criteria, the terrain which you're going to be on, the weather conditions, the weight of your bike, the weight of yourself, and you just plug all that information in and it gives you a recommended tyre pressure. So I use that as a benchmark, and then I sort of adjusted depending on actually how I personally like the feel of the ride, what I'm doing if I want a bit more comfort or if I'm looking for a bit more performance. So I'm going to put in about 80 psi, 79, 80 psi in here. Maximum recommended pressure, surprisingly, is 87 psi, which is 6 bar. So you can just see how things have changed. Back in the day, when everyone thought that it was just better to put a lot more pressure in their tyres because it's going to be faster, what we've realised over time is having the right pressure, having a lower pressure, as well as actually rolling better, is a lot more comfortable. It gives you a lot more control, and with a lot more control means you can take corners quicker and it's a lot safer. So I actually am quite a big advocate now of running my tyres as low as I can, because I think that having them nice and soft, I say soft, I mean we're talking potentially 40 psi less than I did as a kid, just makes the ride all the better. So I've been on this system for 6 months, 6-7 months. The tyres I found are extremely hard wearing, really durable. I'm getting a stack of miles out of them. I've yet to, touch wood, I've yet to have a puncture on the road and for the sealant not to have fixed the puncture. So I haven't put an inner tube in 6 months of riding. We've been everywhere. We've filmed a bunch of cool climbs on gravel and everything, and yeah, I've kind of a bit of a convert now, which is why I thought it would be interesting just to sort of share my experiences. So that's the system. I've got on really well with it. If you've got any questions, doubts, hesitations, then just give me a shout. As I say, this is my experience on it, and yeah, I didn't actually want it to work as well as it did because I thought I knew about UST, and then I tried this and obviously I had a bit more to learn. So hope you enjoy the video. Let me know yeah, if you've got any questions and comments, and what else you want to know about. If there's a particular topic that you think we can help out with, then just give us a shout and we'll do our best to help out. So that's it. Back wheel's ready. It's a nice day, so in my book that means it's about time to go ride. You should do too. Cheers until the next time.